Well, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm joined by surf coach, beach lifeguard trainer, originally Wales, now living in Cornwall, Rhys John. How you doing, Rhys?
Yeah, good to see you, Ross. Thanks for having me on. It's a bit of a pleasure to be on you.
Good to have you on. And obviously we've known each other for good 10 years now, so I know a lot about you. But can you describe yourself for the listeners?
Yeah, so my background is I've been working on the beaches since 2012. Started working in Great Western in Newquay for a small little surf school called Aaron Surf School with a bunch of legends there. And progressed onto that to Ticket to Ride, did some work with them, then went to work for the lifeguards with the RNLI. Did a couple of seasons working in Newquay. I was lucky enough to do fish roll and all the big beaches like that. Got coached by Harlin Surf School, which you can see a badge of. I've been working with them for the last couple of years. And in between that as well, I was lucky enough to go to Western Australia and do some lifeguarding out there. So I had some fun years.
Amazing. And so how was Western Australia, in especially compared to places like Great Western and Fistral?
Yeah, it's a bit of a step up in the game. Some big old sharks out there. Some great things to kind of keep an eye out for. Big waves. So yeah, it's great fun. Beautiful place. The first day I got there, I went down to Yallingup, was one of the beaches I worked. And the kind of supervisor took us down and we stood there and he kind of showed us the beach. And I felt so overwhelmed. The size of the beaches, like the vastness of it, and the rawness of the ocean as well is really raw. So it was eye opener for sure.
Yeah, can imagine. I know we do have the odd days over here, like when someone decides to paddle out Harlin one day and you just get laughed at
Low
by the
tide
other
Harley.
lifeguards. Don't even make it out the back.
Oh yeah.
So, what inspired you to get into surf coaching and then lifeguarding?
So I started learning to surf when I moved down to Cornwall about 2007, and I fancied the idea of going to New Zealand. So I went to New Zealand on a trip and thought I was a bit better than I was. Ended up paddling out to this point break, way above my ability. Got pulled down the beach quite far and pulled into a kelp field and just couldn't get out of it. And luckily, the lifeguards on the beach spotted it, come out, performed the rescue on one of the IRBs, and I just thought that was really cool. So I seen that Max Hepworth at Errant at the time, obviously one of our friends, he was advertising that they were doing lifeguard courses in Newquay, and I just thought that's epic. I'll have a go. So I signed myself up. Didn't know what I was signing up for. Ended up coming back and had Vince Timpson training me, and I thought I was going to die halfway through the week. That guy is a beast. He was one of my initial trainers, and yeah, really opened my eyes to lifeguarding and all the safety side of things, and it was amazing. But I loved the course, and obviously gone on to do it for myself. I'm teaching them now, so kind of it's amazing.
Yeah, you can definitely see there's that you got a little bit of inspiration from Vince because there's a little bit more no BS, just learn to do the job. This isn't. It might be a minimum wage job some places, but it's not minimum effort. So, and I think my first lifeguard course in the UK was with Vince as well, which was probably one of his last actually. Been around 2015, 14, 15. Oh, 2014. Yeah, mental. So what would obviously you then started working with first response as well, didn't you? With Gordon. How was that?
Yeah, Gordon. Yeah, so he was my mentor when I was training. So he's a critical care paramedic for the North East Ambulance. Wealth of knowledge, amazing. I was lucky enough to do a couple of seasons with him. Also, as well, we did water safety cover for the UK Surf Rowers League and a few other bits and pieces as well, which was great fun, just playing on jet skis, basically. Yeah, he got me into doing the lifeguard courses. He said, well, I need some help with them. Do you want to come and help me? I enjoyed it. And he said, well, I can train you to do them. So that's basically what he did. But first response was one of the big things that opened my eyes to lifeguarding, basically. So I got a lot of time for first response and for Gordon Ingram as well.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good guy to work with. And like you say, definitely a very experienced and knowledgeable chap, and certainly the guy you want hanging around if you ever do get in trouble.
You feel safe, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's obviously a couple of different companies and associations, but other than the RNLI, you're an assessor for Surf Lifesaving GB, aren't you? Can you tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, so I'm a trainer assessor with Surf Life Saving GB. Good organisation, worldwide recognised. So when I went to Australia, I was working for them as such. Yeah, an amazing company to work with. They've got a lot of knowledge. A lot of their stuff though is kind of like the club stuff. So obviously you can go and be a part of the clubs. So they do, like, the Harlan's got their own club, Bistro's got clubs, and then you can go and do a lot of training with them, which will keep your fitness up and keep your knowledge up and your first aid up. So if that's something people are interested in, one of the ones I'd probably recommend would be Morgan Porth. They've just started up and they're taking on members at the moment, and they've got an amazing little club down there. They've got a lot of knowledge within that. But yeah, Surf Life Saving GB are the governing body for the courses that I run.
Amazing. And so obviously you've got the rescues, you've got the fitness side of it, but can you talk a bit more about the first aid?
Yeah, so the course which I run, we do a good 3 days of first aid training. So some of the fundamentals would be like a primary survey. So if people have done courses before, the primary survey is probably something they would have heard of, but it's a good way of initial assessment of a person. So if you come up to someone and they are conscious or unconscious, it can be used on both of those. And the primary survey is some ways of finding out things that could be quite important going onwards. So for people who don't know, a primary survey would be as simple as coming up to someone and recognizing any forms of danger. So let's put it into a beach environment. You come up to someone on a beach environment and they are in the water, face down. They are in danger, and you could possibly in danger as well, because obviously the risks of going into an ocean with the surf and wind and everything else going on, tides. So that could be your initial part of that. And then we would go into a next element of it would be the kind of the response of it. So finding out someone's response levels. So there's an acronym for that. So we use the acronym of AVPU, which would be alert. So we're alert at the moment. We're having a conversation. You are kind of responding to me. You're keeping contact with me. So that would be your go-to to start with. But if that person was face down in the water and you're shouting to get their attention, then you'd go into voice, which would be the next level down. So that kind of something to consider. And then if they are not responding to that, we would go into pain, which would be a pain response, which could be simply a tap on the shoulder. You can use other forms as well. And then the last one would be unresponsive. So unresponsive, if you found an unresponsive person, there is a problem there. So you don't go unresponsive for no reason. There's something that's caused that to happen. So if we was in that situation, we would also be considering another little thing to go with that would be the mechanism of injury. So why are they there? How are they there? If we looked around and they look like they've fallen from a cliff, obviously we can consider injuries of that. So let's say spinals, broken bones, internal injuries and stuff like that. If it looks like they've kind of fallen off a surfboard and surfboard's floating around them, they could think of impact from blunt trauma, so hit to the back of the head, sort of that could knock someone unconscious, or they could just be laying in the water unconscious. That could be something medical, so like someone having a seizure, someone having a heart attack, or something like that. With them sort of ideas, we can kind of suss what's potentially going on in front of us. Another one to consider as well within that would be your major bleed. So your catastrophic bleeds would be in within that as well. So if you come up to that person and they're in the water and there's a vast amount of blood around them, then we could be considering, are they bleeding profusely from somewhere? We need to kind of find out quite quickly. So in that situation, depending on where you are with that, we want to consider maybe getting them out of the water as quickly as we can. So from there, we drag them out the water and then we can carry on with our primary survey. So let's say we got them up the beach. We're going to go to the next elements now. So the next element would be the airway. So that would be your A. So we'd have danger. So D, R, response, mechanism of injury, and we'd have major bleeds within that area. And then we'd go to A, would be your airway. So we would check the airway by keeping the head in a neutral alignment and just opening up the mouth what we're looking for in that area is we're looking for any obstructions. So that could be as simple as a foreign object, like sick, tang, could be blocking certain elements. There could be seaweed in there. We're just kind of having a look to see in that area to see what's going on within that. So as we're looking through that as well, we could also use our hearing. Are they snoring? Are they making abnormal noises? Are they making abnormal gasps? Is there something else going on there? So the airway can kind of give us indications of other things going on. Within that as well, within kind of that first initial look, what we could think about as well is how they look in as well. So if they were just discolored or anything like that, there's other things going on there. We look at the airway, make sure the airway is open when we're doing that. Then we're considering obviously injury or not injured. Let's say they're not injured for nice simple purposes. From there, then we're going to open up the airway. So they call it sniffing the morning air. So we're opening up that airway, which then open up the trachea and open up all around the throat area so we can get air into that area. You might find that by doing something like that, if they kind of are compromised, that might be a sort of a starting point to open up. Hopefully they might start breathing again. But if that's a good case scenario, that's not always going to happen. So in that hindsight, we're going to open up the airway and we're going to check for any breathing. So to do that, we're going to look, listen and feel. We're going to come down nice and close to them. We're going to look for any kind of rises. So what people do get confused on a lot of it is when people are looking, they're looking for the chest to rise and fall, but we breathe through the abdomen, so we breathe through that area. So we don't breathe with the chest. If we breathe with the chest area rising and falling, there's probably something going wrong there as well. So we breathe through the abdomen area. So we're kind of looking into that area. So when we're looking for the rise and the fall. And just to keep it nice and simple, the best way of doing that is if we think of it when someone breathes, they're breathing in and they're breathing out. So that's a breath. So one up and down, we class that as one. So when we're looking at that, that's quite an important thing to look at. So we're looking in and we're looking out. And what we would do to speed the process up, we can do this for 10 seconds. We're looking for the breath to come in and out, and we're looking for 10 seconds. We're also listening for any sounds like we were earlier, and we're feeling. So if we're close enough and they might be kind of have a bit of heat still in them, you might be able to feel a bit of the breath on your face as well. So feeling for that as well. Or we could use our hands if we're not getting that, and we can feel onto the kind of the abdominal area to feel for any rises and falling. So that's kind of a thing for that. What we're doing then after the 10 seconds is we would be times in wherever we find in our 10 seconds by 6, and then we get an overall minute. So if we say, break it down nice and simple, 0, 1, they're not breathing. So what we can do then is we can kind of make sure that we got help on its way, updating anything that's kind of there, and making sure that we got someone coming to help us, really. But also then we got 2, 3, and 4, which would be the 2, 3, or 4 breaths in 10 seconds. We times up by 6, we've got 12, 18, 24 breaths, which is good for the breathing rate. Anything above is a bit fast and we'd monitor. So depending on where you are as well, just kind of breaking down that acronym again. So we've got danger, coming in, checking for any dangers, making sure we stay safe. Then we got the response levels. When we get to unresponsive, what we can also consider as well, so not too much information in, but if you are on your own, you want to consider getting some help as well. So don't do this on your own, really. It's quite important. So once you get to response, if they're unresponsive, think about calling for help. That might just be, if we're on the beach, Ross, come over, give me a hand. We've got someone here. It could be someone walking a dog. Hey, come here. I need some help. Or it could be simple as getting your phone out and calling for help, and they'll run through everything with you with the ambulance service as well. So make sure we get some help. It's really important with that. And then we kind of checking the major bleeds, mechanism injuries. That all comes into that first kind of play, but then the airway, breathing, and circulation is kind of the go-to. And that's something, the primary survey is something that is used throughout. It's just the higher you go up with your training, the more kit you got, really. But for someone who's just on the beach with a limited amount of kind of first aid knowledge, that could change the outcome of someone's kind of living or dying as such.
Yeah, definitely. Now you say you phone for the emergency services. Obviously, for us, we're used to being on the coast and who to speak to, because it's not just the ambulance, is it? Who else could you call via 999?
You can call the Coast Guard as well, so that's quite a good one. So a lot of people don't know that. So if you rang 999 and said, can I get the Coast Guard? the Coast Guard would come out and assist within that. So you might have the lifeboat come out if they're in the ocean. So say you're out to sea and things are going on, and you weren't, say this time of year it's still cold. You're not going in, but you can see someone in the water. You could call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard could also come to the beach as well and assist with the beach. They've got medical training with them as well, so they would more than likely turn up quite quickly. You'll find down in Cornwall, more than likely the Coast Guard will probably be one of the first ones on scene because they're normally the closest around.
I was going to go on to say that trying to get from Truro to Harlyn, for example, in peak summer, they're not going to be there in under 40 minutes.
No.
So obviously every second counts. Amazing. So obviously first aid is crucial, but say you do find somebody in the sea, or your kids just got caught by a bit of a quick flash rip and they're floating out, or they've slipped off the sandbar. See it all the time on Bondi Rescue and the old backpackers rip. What's going to be a massive factor in that? So how would your fitness play in terms of having to battle against rips, or your currents, your waves? How important would you say having a good level of fitness is?
Oh, 100%. Like, the ocean is such a wild thing to be a part of. Even today, doing a surf lesson today, I had a little kiddie with me, and it wasn't that big, it wasn't that much water moving, but they got pulled out to sea, and I was having to swim out to get them. And it was multiple times they were doing it. They were just not realizing kind of the consequences of getting pulled out. But what I would say is, it's kind of that human instinct, wouldn't it be? So that if you've seen your kid getting pulled out, the first thing you're going to do is want to run into that sea and get them as such. So just be mindful of the kind of the elements you're going up against. So what it might be better than running, if he was on a lifeguarded beach, rather than you running in to get them, it might be better to notify the lifeguards to assist as such. But if you had to go in and get them, you'd want to take something that as an aid as such. So the things we were always told with the lifeguards is you never go in empty-handed. So you'd always see a lifeguard performing a rescue with a rescue tube or a board, or even crafts like skis and boats and stuff like that. You wouldn't go in empty-handed as such. So if you had a board with you and you could get to that person with a board, that would be handy. But one thing I would teach if it was my own kids is, and I taught this kid today, don't get off your board. Your board is your lifeline, so hold on to that board and make sure you stay with that board until someone comes to get you. So having that level of fitness is needed within working on the beaches or just being on the beach, because like things can happen very, very quickly and without any warning as well.
Exactly. Like, the ocean's not very forgiving, is it? Like, and it can change in no time at all. I mean, you've seen it plenty of times where it might be flat, or it might be a perfect little 1-2 foot wave that's super fun. But so that you'll probably remember 2016, the big issue that happened at Fisher and the family got washed off the rocks.
I was working that day. I was at the beach that day. I was working Western.
Yeah, because you had that at one point, and then I remember because I'd been out in Fistral surfing, and then on the way back to Jack's place, there was the Coast Guard was hovering above Towan because there was a little girl that had got washed too far out, but the swell had literally gone from maybe shoulder to head high to double, triple overhead. I know for me, I was a little bit undergunned because I'd gone out on this slide and glide 6.0, which was perfect for when I got in. But by the end of it, kind of needed a gun. Like, it was getting absolutely solid. And that was in a space of about 40 minutes. So every set that come in was just creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And obviously that then forces a stronger rip current. So that's what I want to move on to next is rips. Now, so much confusion, not necessarily false information, but just confusion about what a rip current is, how it works, rip tides, and people think it pulls you under, but that's more the fatigue rather than anything else, isn't it? A rip's going to travel along. I'll let you sort of explain what a rip current is.
So you got different elements of a rip as well. So we'll break them down first. So you got a fixed rip, which is your kind of rip where, let's say you got sandbars on the beach, and that kind of sandbar will act as the water comes in, water hits the sandbar, creates the wave, water comes into the beach, and then water is going to find the best way to go back out. So it'll find the easiest route that it can. So with a fixed rip, that kind of setup could be that positioning with the sandbars and everything else could be there for hours, weeks, days, months, whatever, but at some point it can disappear. So let's think about that water coming in, hits the bar, comes in, and then goes back out. And then all of a sudden, one big wave hits that bar, and then all that sandbar then, which everyone's been standing on, swimming on, surfing on, and everything else, can disappear. Then you'll have what's called a flash rip. So a flash rip can happen at any point. Morgan Porth are notorious for flash rips. Heron Porth's notorious for it as well. Obviously, you've got big waves coming into the sandbars, and then just kind of causing that to kind of displace. Normally what you would see is the waves coming in, you'll probably see them hitting nice and thing, and then all of a sudden you'll see the water change color, like a brown kind of color, and then all that sand's getting displaced. So that kind of the flash rip kicking off the back of that. And then you've got the permanent rip down, which would be your harbors or your something there that's going to be there for a long period of time, like Newquay Harbour. If people know Newquay Harbour, if you was going to surf on a big tower one day, you could just go up on the side of the harbour and you've got a rip that's going to take you out to sea as such. So rips can be your friend, but they also can be your enemy as well. So if you know how to use a rip, the three basic elements of a rip would be you've got your feeder, your neck, and your head. So if you knew how to use that, you could jump into the feeder, through the neck, out to the head, and then what would happen is you'd get kind of pulled around a little bit, and then the water eventually would probably just let you go. And then you probably come out probably further than where the waves are breaking, depending on what the rip is doing or everything like that. But also as well, you just kind of just be left out at some point. So the Heron Porth guards, when I did some lifeguarding down there, they used to chuck a pair of fins on and know where the rip was and run and jump into the rip with their fins on and would get pulled out to sea. And they would know exactly where that rip was going to take them and everything else. And they knew how to avoid that then at a later date whenever they were putting the flags up and stuff like that. So, like I said, rips can happen and they can be there for the duration. We used to get a fish roll where most of the time, so you have different. Another one to think about as well is you got spring and neap tides. You got big and small tides. With a spring tide, the water's going to come in faster. You're going to get bigger tides, and you're going to get further up the beach. Whereas when you got neaps, it won't be such a big movement in the ocean. So we used to get it where on a spring tide, you knew there was going to be rips, but because the tide was moving so fast, it'd kind of help us out a little bit and move past the rip quite quickly. Whereas on a neap tide, it'd be there all day and that rip, and someone would have to be on a rescue board or someone would have to be monitoring that or something like that, and that rip is going to be in play for a lot of the time. So like I said, rips can kind of help you if you had a big surf and you want to get out nice and easy, because what's going to happen predominantly is there's not going to be any water breaking there because the water's going to be running back out as well, so it's going to be taking you out to sea. But if you was someone who doesn't go to the beach very often, that's where it's going to get scary. So what you would probably find is someone would mistakenly get himself into a rip if they weren't sure, and they would try and swim straight back to the beach because they'll think that's the way they've got to get out of there. But you're working against a volume of water that's going to want to take you the opposite direction. So if you ever did find yourself caught into a rip, the best thing you can ever do is don't panic to start with. Panic is where people get themselves into problems. So if you just stay nice and calm, like I said, more than likely, if it is going to take you, it's going to take you to a certain distance and you're probably going to come out of that rip. But if you're a stronger swimmer or if you're a little bit more confident in the water, you want to swim across to where the waves are breaking. So if you look to your left or your right and you can see waves breaking into there, you want to head into where the waves are breaking, and that will give you a little bit of sanctuary away from that rip. Another thing as well with the lifeguards, and people get so annoyed all the time, is you'll see lifeguards will set up red and yellow flags where the swimming, bathing, bodyboarded areas are, and they will normally set them where the best part of the waves are. So one of the reasons they would do that is because that wave is consistently pushing people in. So they know there's no any rips there at the moment. There's going to be waves pushing in, and if someone was swimming, they're not going to get very far because the water's going to be pushing them in with the surf. So predominantly that's why you'll see red and yellows in good surf locations, and you'll see them moving. So the lifeguards will deem swimmers, bathing, bodyboarders more vulnerable than someone surfing because they haven't got a craft or something like that, or something to keep them afloat. So that's something to be mindful of as well. So where the lifeguards are setting up, they will have good knowledge of where the rips are and stuff like that. And if you're unsure, ask a lifeguard. They'll give you some heads up on it.
Cool. And if so, what would you suggest people do if they are in the rip they can't remember all the information. What a lot of people will start waving, but obviously busy beach in summers, you're not
Oh,
really going to stand out. Everyone's
no.
going to go, oh yeah, they're having a great time. What would you suggest they do?
So once again, depends if you've got a craft or not. If you've got your surfboard with you, hold on to your surfboard. And the best way to get the attention of a lifeguard is one fist in the air, raising in the air and shouting for help. That's a better way of kind of getting their attention. Like I said, if you're waving, I've had it before where people are waving, and you're like, oh, hi. And then you're like, oh, no, actually, they need some help. And you're like running down there. But a case of putting a fist in the air will get more kind of a reaction. And as surf coaches, as we know, that's what we teach in our surf lessons. So most kiddies and stuff like that, we teach them if you need help, that's your best way to get the help to come to you very quickly. But like I said, the biggest thing that happens all the time is that people get caught out in the water and they start panicking. That's when reasoning goes out the window. If it's easier said than done, but if you just stay nice and calm, hold on to anything, or if you are struggling, the best thing you could do if you haven't got a board is that float to live, like I say, on the RNLI. If anyone's ever seen that, so just floating on your back and just kind of trying to keep your energy levels up, because as soon as it lets you go, you can start, if you need to, swim out to wherever you need to be as such. But it's that float to live is the big one with the RNLI at the moment, and especially with this time of year, the cold water shock and everything else as well. People jumping in and stuff like that, is that initial takes your breath away, panic sets in, and then you start losing your strength, and that's when people start going under the water a lot more.
Especially if there's been a few too many bevies the night before.
Oh
Obviously,
yes.
alcohol's not your friend when it comes to cold water.
No.
Perfect. So, where would you, at an average beach, there's a couple of foot waves coming through. What could be a telltale sign of where a rip current is?
So a couple of things you could see is that this colourment of water, which we said earlier. So that could be the sand in the water or something like that. You could have debris running up on the top of the water, so you'll see the water going back out to sea as such. Where the waves are not breaking, a lot of the time you'll see little gaps in the waves, and that's where people get caught out, because they like, especially people swimming, they go down to the water's edge, they go, well, that place has got no one surfing and it's nice and calm there, and that's potentially could be where the rip is as well. So a little trick I've always been told is, if you've never been to that beach before, don't just get your suit on and run straight down, because you don't know what's going on. Sit, watch it for a bit. Just, it's not going to go anywhere. Sit and watch it and see where people are surfing, if people are surfing out there, where people are swimming, and also watch what the waves are doing, and where kind of, if you got them little gaps, like you said, is it notable? Can you see where the gaps are and stuff like that? But just watch it for a bit. That's the biggest thing. Like, that's the one thing I do when I go to a new beach. I don't try and run in. I want to see what's going on and where everyone's doing as such. And like I said, if there's good surfers out there as well, you'll see how they're working things. Like, France was an eye opener for me down in southwest of France in Hossegor. When you watch good surfers down there, and they use rips as conveyor belts, so they'll catch a wave, they'll come across, they'll catch the rip out, and then they're right back in the same position. So they're kind of doing a big loop as such. But that's local knowledge. That's something that takes a little while to learn as well. But if you can just watch people do things, you'll get an idea for things.
No, perfect. And like you say, in that time, you can be doing a bit of a warm up as well, get yourself prepped and ready to go. Because despite what a lot of people think, your paddle out isn't actually a warm up. It
Yeah,
helps, but you need to warm the
absolutely,
shoulders up before that,
absolutely.
especially, yeah. Especially if it's going to be a heavy session and it's a bit of a
Yeah.
mission to get out. So moving back towards like the fitness side of thing, what do you do to maintain your fitness? Sort of
Yeah.
not necessarily in season, because the job obviously takes care of a lot of that. What do you do off season?
So try and do a bit of gym work. I do so I try and do at least 3 days in the gym, because even though you want to be fit, you need to be strong as well, because you've got to consider, if you've got an unconscious person that is in the water, and let's say they're a little bit bigger as well, you've got to have that strength to be able to pull them up onto boards and stuff like that. It's quite a physical job, being on the beach. So you don't necessarily just need the fitness side of things, you need the strength side of things as well. So I try and keep my strength levels up in the winter. I do some climbing in the winter. I try and surf as much as I can as well, try and be in the water as much as I can. and I try and just generally just do. Well, I got a dog as well, so that kind of keeps me active as well. Walking the dog and just try and keep moving, keep my body moving. A lot of stretching. Just started Pilates as well, so a lot of people kind of think that's a bit thing, but Pilates is harder than it looks, and it definitely keeps you fit. So yeah, just kind of lots of things like that, really.
Amazing. Yeah, it's like you say, there's a lot of physical exertion, um, especially when it comes to rescues. And
Mm.
obviously, I'll refer back to Bondi Rescue because a lot of people have seen it, whether they surf or not. And if you do have something like a mass rescue and you've got multiple people to bring in, then obviously people don't even have to be unconscious, do they? You could just have
No,
someone that's panicking so much that they're not
yeah,
actually listening to you. You almost don't
no,
exist. So
yeah,
trying to get them on the front of the board or even in a
yeah,
tube,
yeah,
and then you got to drag them through the water all the way back. It's
yeah,
quite an effort.
absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, no, that's brilliant. Sort of tips that you'd recommend in terms of what you found training wise works for you.
So I like functional movement and stuff, so all of that sort of functional kind of training and such. So I'm obsessed with the rower and stuff like that. So I do a lot of rowing, do a lot of deadlifting and stuff like that to keep my leg strength up as well. And I've got quite a physical job in the winter as well. So I do other things in the winter, like concrete and stuff like that. So that keeps a lot of, I need some strength for that as well. But more, it's more like kind of it's not. I don't like do the classic just chest day, back day, stuff like that. It's like upper body, lower body, push pull sort of training and stuff, but with a lot of kind of cardio mixed in with it as well. Try and swim as well, just to keep that kind of the aerobic kind of fitness in with kind of all of that as well. Yeah, just a lot of kind of. I quite like the kind of the keeping the that deadlift. Like if you're going to do like fireman lifts and stuff like that, just kind of that sort of kind of function to it, really.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. I mean, that's it. You need a decent strength and conditioning program to hit the whole body the way it needs to be hit. And
Mm.
I've talked about it a lot where it's no good just being able to swim for miles and miles and miles and miles,
No,
especially if as a surfer or even as a lifeguard, it's very stop start. You're not duck diving when you're a lifeguard, but you do have to stop paddling as that wave hits to get the board up and over the top. Or if you are going out just with your body or with the tube, then you've still got to stop, go underneath the wave, and then go again. So you're using a different energy system, and that's more. So up to 10 seconds is your phosphate creatine system, and then that goes into your anaerobics. That's where strength and power comes in, and then after about 2.5, 3 minutes, then you've got your aerobic system. So you do need all three. But if you're training for surfing or for rescues, then you need to be focusing a lot on them first too. Get a
mm,
good base level of aerobic fitness, which will actually increase by doing the other two, training the other two energy systems. So hit system intervals on the rower, for example, are a brilliant one because they do target a lot of the muscles used with surfing, swimming, paddling. But that will by doing, for example, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off
yeah,
for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 rounds, that will actually improve your general overall aerobic capacity, as well as
yeah,
working on that sort of immediate hit of going, right, full blast, right, I need to chill out for a second, full blast again, come back, full blast. It all works together. So you're probably going
yeah,
to get more bang for your buck by doing a lot more intervals and adding more rounds on over
yeah,
time.
yeah,
So obviously you're on one of my training programs, and the hit training, for example, will start with say 5 or 6 rounds, and then after a couple of weeks we'll throw another couple of rounds in. After a couple of weeks we'll throw a couple more rounds in.
yeah,
So you'll build up to maybe 10, 12, 13 rounds, at which point we need to
I start
start
hating you.
incorporating like weights vests and bits and pieces to sort that out, and more food to keep that energy flowing. Yeah, and it's paramount to get that exercise up and through the roof. I mean, don't get me wrong, surfing and swimming in the sea and paddling a board around in the sea is a really great tool. Obviously, it's as specific as you're going to get, but you need to have that program as well to help build the general strength and help with injury prevention. So if you paddle, and you're doing that 3-4 times a week, great, you're going to get really, really good at your paddling. However, the stress that's putting on to all the muscles and everything and ligaments around your shoulders, your rotator cuff, teres minor, subscapularis, all of that is going to take such a hiding that needs to be strengthened to help prevent the injury through the rotator cuff and the shoulder, and actually make it a stronger unit. It's your body is a machine that needs to be well looked after, and everything, you can't neglect anything, because over time that will start breaking things down. You'll get muscular imbalances. You might have a seriously good set of shoulders for a while, but they might not be much use, because you'll start getting RSI, repetitive strain injuries, or tendonitis, tennis elbow, all them sort of things, which nobody wants, because then suddenly your surfing days are behind you. You're on a paddleboard and you're not enjoying life anymore.
No.
If you're even able to paddleboard. Yeah, having a good training regime is definitely paramount. So, have you got any advice as we come to the end for anyone that's maybe they've surfed for a few years, they spend a lot of time down the beach, and maybe they want to come and do a season as a surf coach or a lifeguard? Have you got any tips that, if you could tell yourself again from 10 years ago, what would it be?
Well, 10 years ago, I didn't used to train in the winter. So I used to do the seasons. And as soon as the season finished, I'd either be away surfing abroad sometimes, maybe. But if I wasn't, I wouldn't do it. And then as I'm getting older now, so I'm 37 this year, I'm getting to that point where it's like, if I don't keep it up over the winter, coming back into a new season, I'm dead. I just struggle so hard. And it's like going from a cold start to kind of 100 mile an hour, because seasons do take it out of you. They are hard work. Like each season, I probably lose about a stone of weight just from being on the beach, just being in the water every day, just from running around and doing all the stuff and being out in the sun and everything else. And I don't eat any less. I eat more, and I drink plenty of fluids, and I make sure I'm hydrated, and I'm kind of looking after my body. But still, like it's a very physical job. It's amazing. It's the best job in the world. Like, it's no better job when you're standing on the water's edge watching someone catch some nice waves, or if you're lifeguarding and you're just there on the most beautiful day of fish drill, say for argument's sake, and you're just like, this is my job. I get to do this as a job. Like, there's no better office. You don't know what each day is going to be like. What you can walk in on a Monday and it could be the most perfect day. You can walk in Tuesday, it could be 50-mile-an-hour winds onshore, crazy, people having heart attacks. Like, it'd just be a hectic day. Like, I would say to myself, don't take it for granted. Look after yourself. Make sure you look after your body. Make sure you don't wait until you're too old to start doing it. Because I've started also doing the training and everything else, but I've also getting lots of sports massages, kind of making sure my body's nice and supple, making sure that I'm eating enough proteins and everything else. And I'd say, just put the work in now while you can. Make sure that you kind of treat it as a job some days as well, because you've got to kind of treat it for what it is as well, and enjoy it. It's the best. I love it.
So yeah, it's definitely an investment in terms of the body. If we get one body, sure, we can get replacements later on, and I know I'm due a knee replacement.
Yeah.
For me, that's why I still train, because if I don't, then my knee goes wobbly and it's not much fun at all. So consistently training means I can, when I get a chance, go surfing and everything else. But mate, been brilliant having you on,
Thank you
and
very much.
I'll let you get your early night ready for another day on the beach tomorrow.
Can't wait. Bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be good fun. So, if people want to reach out and get involved in a lifeguard course with you, where can they head to?
So the best one to do would be the harlandsurfschool.co.uk, and we have a training page on there. All the information that you need is on there. It gives you a download of what you're going to be doing for the week, how it works, and everything else. Failing that, give you a shout, and then you can pass them on to me then. Yeah, we've got some courses coming up over the next couple of months. We're going over the weekend, actually, kind of 3-day kind of Surf Coach Safety and Rescue Award, which will entail you to be able to go and work as a surf coach. But we've also got the Lifeguard Award, which is a full 5-day gold standard award coming up in the beginning of May. So that's something that people should jump on. It's great fun. But yeah, get yourself prepared, because we've had a few people come to them courses and quit after the first day because they don't realize how physical it is and how hard it is. And well, you've seen it. I think you had, when you did your course, we had that girl come and she did a day's training with us and turned around to Gordon and was like, didn't expect this. I didn't think it was going to be this hard. And Gordon just laughed. And she just kind of, as she was walking off, she was like, well, I told you what it was going to be like. But it's harder than it looks. So if anyone's interested in it and they want to come and get involved, one thing I'd say is prepare for it, because we don't give it to you easy.
That's it. And it's not just that test day, is it? Which is 400-meter swim in, I think it's 8 minutes now, and then
7.5 minutes, under 7.5 minutes. You're going to do it in 7:29.
Nice. So yeah, 7.5 minutes, and you've got your run on the beach. And what's that one?
So that's 200 meters in 40 seconds.
So it's not anything too crazy, but to be honest, in terms of physical output on the course, that's probably the easiest day, isn't it? If
100%.
we're honest, like what this girl underestimated was so a typical day could be working around tides, but for example, mornings could be the dry theory stuff, and then in the afternoons you're spending 4 hours, maybe a bit more, doing rescues and spinal lifts until you get it right, which is imperative because you're dealing with people's lives.
Yeah,
that's the hard part, especially
absolutely.
if, like you say, it's not midsummer, or even if it is, and we've still got 40-mile-an-hour cold northerly winds.
Yeah,
You're in a wet wetsuit. There's a bit of grit involved. So yeah, just
absolutely.
be prepared mentally and physically. On that note, if you do need some physical training, give me a shout. Rhys, as you can see, wealth of experience, and is still a victim/client of my training program. It seems to be working for him. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Rhys, again, cheers, mate. We'll have a catch up soon, and have a good one.
And you too. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Cheers, buddy. There we go. Hi, I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. If you're interested in anything the guest has to say today, then please have a look in the description for the links. Please feel free to like, share and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode.